conclude.
Today, we're working out of a new Headway Intermediate book, pages 74 and 75. We have work in small groups, read the following quotation. What does it mean? Mr. Paul, can you please read this quotation?
Only when the last tree has died, and the last river has been poisoned, and the last fish has been caught, will we realize that we can't eat money.
Now what do you think this quotation means?
Teacher, does it mean that we're actually poisoning the land and the money is just paper? We need food to eat, like fish, but if we poison the rivers through pollution, the fish will die and we will be hungry.
That is a very interesting interpretation. Now, who do you think said this? Would it be a political leader, an African fisherman, a French farmer, an ancient Greek philosopher, or a Native American?
I believe it was a Native American. I'm pretty certain.
Let's see. In American, it was said by a member of the Cree tribe in the 19th century. Interesting. Now, you are going to read extracts from a story called The Man Who Planted Trees by the French writer Jean Guénot, 1895 to 1971. In the story, Guénot describes his meetings with a solitary shepherd who plants trees while the rest of the world is at war. So, we're going to read and listen to the extracts and answer the questions after each one. Interesting. Here we are. Mr. Paul, please read our script here.
Okay. About 40 years ago, I was taking a long trip on foot over mountain heights unknown to tourists. All around was barren and colourless land. Nothing grew there but wild lavender.
Very good. Now, when I say mountain heights, what do you think I mean by that?
Very high up mountains.
Could be, yes. And what is a tourist?
This is a person who goes on holiday with a camera sometimes. We have lots of Japanese tourists in London with their cameras. But they could be like on an adventure holiday where they climb mountains. So then they take their backpack with them.
Okay. If I say something that's barren, what do I say?
There's no trees, there's no flowers, there's no grass.
Okay.
The land is like a desert.
And what is wild lavender?
I think this is like a flower which is a kind of purple colour, and it's very has this very pungent smell, very strong smell, which is a very sweet smell.
Very good. Please read paragraph 2 for us.
After 5 hours walking, I had still not found water. All about me was the same dryness, the same coarse grasses. I thought I saw in the distance a small black silhouette. It was a shepherd. 30 sheep were lying about him on the baking earth. He gave me a drink and took me to his cottage on the plain.
Very good. Now, if I say all about me was the same dryness, what am I thinking about with dryness there?
I think it was just like a desert because there's no grass, no trees, nothing's growing. It's just totally dry.
If I say coarse, what do you think there?
I think that the grass is not soft. It's even like not green grass, maybe brown, and it's half dead.
And if I say silhouette, what am I saying?
I think this is like a black shape.
Outline of something, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, and a cottage. What's a cottage?
A cottage is a small house in the country.
Very good. Please read number 3.
I felt peace in the presence of this man. I asked if I might rest here for a day. He found it quite natural. He gave me the impression that nothing could surprise him. I didn't actually need to rest, but I was interested and wished to know more about him.
Very good. If I say felt peace, what am I talking about with peace there?
Totally at one with nature.
Okay. If I say impression here, what am I talking about?
Here I think it means that he made me feel a certain way about him.
Okay, sounds good. Now, why don't we hear it one more time from the narrator's voice.
Tape script 9.8. About 40 years ago, I was taking a long trip on foot over mountain heights unknown to tourists.
Excuse me, teacher.
All around
Can
was
we open
barren
the
and
script?
colourless land. Nothing grew there but wild lavender. After 5 hours walking, I had still not found water. All about me was the same dryness, the same coarse grasses. I thought I saw in the distance a small black silhouette. It was a shepherd. 30 sheep were lying about him on the baking earth. He gave me a drink and took me to his cottage on the plain. I felt peace in the presence of this man. I asked if I might rest here for a day. He found it quite natural. He gave me the impression that nothing could surprise him. I didn't actually need to rest, but I was interested and wished to know more about him.
Okay. Now, we have Jin Yino wrote the story in 1953. In which year does the story begin?
1953.
What was he doing when he met the shepherd?
He was taking a long trip on foot over mountain heights.
Okay, now what I'm wondering about is, he wrote the story in 1953, but he begins it with about 40 years ago. So do you think it might have taken place in 1913? That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and because I noticed later he spoke about the war. So
Okay.
that would have been the First World War, which began in 1914. So yeah, that would be right, yeah.
Now what was he doing when he met the shepherd?
He was walking, he saw him and he spoke to him.
Yeah. 5 hours walking, right? These things happened. So the black silhouette of the shepherd. Okay. Now we have the story takes place in France. Which part of France do you think it is and why?
Possibly Normandy.
Okay. Why would you say Normandy?
There's a lot of countryside up there, and a lot of parts of it, I'm sure, from like half a century ago, even longer than that, there were places which were very barren.
Okay. Now what is the countryside like? He just described it actually. Barren, right?
Yes, barren, like colourless land.
Okay. Why do you think the writer is interested in the shepherd?
Because he found the shepherd to have a certain peace about his character. So he was interested in this man.
Sure, yeah. It was restful, right? He found peace in his presence, wanted to rest there for the day. He found that natural? Sure. What do you think he likes about the man and his lifestyle?
The fact that he's outside and he's got all this land out there and he's got all these sheep and he's living a very nomadic type of lifestyle.
Sure, yeah. Before going to bed, the shepherd puts a large sack under the table. From it, he carefully removes 100 perfect acorns. The writer was curious. The next day, when he goes out with the shepherd into the hills, he discovers what the acorns are for. What do you think the acorns are for?
I think he's going to plant them and hopefully grow some oak trees.
Possibly.
Could we have a look at the key, please?
Sure. So, we were right, in 1913, when he was walking the mountains, they're saying the Alps in the south of France. Because it's in the mountains and the countryside is dry and barren, that's not easy. You would have to actually know about France itself to get that one. He might be interested in finding out why and how someone lives in such a barren environment. He likes the feeling of peace and the company of this man. We got that. Interested in why he feels such peace. Interesting. Okay. Good. Now, why don't we go ahead and read this? What do we have in this first paragraph?
I noticed that he carried for a stick an iron rod as thick as my thumb and about 1.5 meters long. He began thrusting his iron rod into the earth, making a hole in which he planted an acorn. Then he refilled the hole. He was planting oak trees.
Aha. Now if I say an iron rod, what would that mean?
A rod is something like a stick but made of iron. So it's a very heavy, hard kind of stick.
Okay. And an acorn. What exactly is an acorn?
The acorn comes from the oak tree. It's like the seed of the oak tree.
Okay.
And it's about the size of someone's thumb, or half the size of a thumb, I suppose.
Okay. And why don't we read paragraph 2?
I suppose I must have been fairly insistent in my questioning, for he answered me. For 3 years he had been planting trees in this wilderness. He had planted 100,000. Of the 100,000, 20,000 had sprouted. Of the 20,000, he still expected to lose half. There remained the 10,000 oak trees to grow where nothing had grown before.
Now, when I say sprouted, what does that mean?
This is when the acorn begins to give out the plant. I believe it's called the sapling, which is about a tiny, tiny oak tree, if you like, maybe about 2 or 3 inches in height. But that's when it comes out of the ground. That's sprouted out of the ground.
Yep. Okay. What do we have here? Read first, please.
That was when I began to wonder about the age of this man. He was obviously over 50, 55 he told me. His name was Elzéar Bouffier. I told him that in 30 years his 10,000 oaks would be magnificent. The next day we parted.
Aha. Magnificent, what does that mean?
Oh, really superb, really wonderful, like you can have a magnificent palace. Something that looks fantastic, wonderful to the eye.
Very good, very good. Now we have, what did Elzéar do with the acorns?
Well, he planted them in the ground.
Uh-huh. What did he use as a tool?
He used this iron rod, and it was about 1.5 meters long.
Perfect. How many had he already planted?
Well, I thought he planted 100,000.
Okay. How many were growing?
20,000.
Uh-huh. How old was Elzéar at the time?
55.
How old do you think the writer was?
I don't know, maybe 35?
What do you think Elzéar's ambition is?
I think he sets out to make the land fertile and grow lots of plants and trees and make it pleasant for everyone for the future.
Okay. What is his vision of the future?
Well, as I said, his vision is to make the land fertile, to have lots of oak trees. I think he's looking to have at least 10,000 oak trees.
Okay. And then we have draw a sketch of the landscape around his home at the time of extracts 1 and 2.
Okay, teacher, I've drawn mine. Is this one okay? Do you like this? Look at that. Look at that.
Yes, that was a very fast drawing.
Yes, I'm a fast drawer.
Now we have draw a sketch of how you think it will look in 30 years' time.
Oh, and here's the other one. What do you think of that? Eh?
Once again, very, very fast drawing. Outstanding. Let's take a look here. So, he planted them by making a hole in the earth with a rod. He planted 100,000 of these 20,000 are growing. LZR was 55, the writer seemed a lot younger. He could be about 18. He's writing in 1953, about 60 years ago. He must have been an idealistic young man, young enough to go to war. LZR must want to create a forest. His vision must be of a time when the land was not barren, dry, but full of trees. And here we have a sketch, some dry barren land, and here we have a sketch of land with trees planted everywhere. How fabulous. Okay. For the next 5 years, the writer was a soldier and fights in World War I. The war ends in 1918, and his thoughts turn again to the tree planter in the mountains. He returns to look for it. Please read paragraph 1 for us.
I had seen too many men die during those 5 years not to imagine that Elzéar Bouffier was dead. He was not dead. As a matter of fact, he was extremely well. He had changed jobs. He had got rid of the sheep because they threatened his young trees. For, he told me, the war had disturbed him not at all. He had continued to plant.
Aha. Very good. Now, what is his attitude here toward the sheep? He's saying they threatened, right?
Yeah.
What is he saying by threatened?
It's when you tell somebody or put someone at risk and you tell them if they don't do something, you're going to do something really terrible to them.
Right. So do you think that the sheep were maybe eating the young trees or
Yeah.
trampling on the sprouts? So they
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
grow,
The
or-
saplings, the very small ones, they were obviously eating them.
Yeah.
And so they wouldn't grow. And I
Well, this
guess, yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
I suppose he was, well, his idea is really more to do with trees than sheep.
Sure.
So he decided the sheep have to go.
Yeah, okay. And now, interesting wording here with the word disturbed, right? The war had disturbed him, not at all. What do you think he's saying there?
It means that it didn't interfere with his lifestyle.
Right, good. Please read number 2 for us.
The oaks were then 10 years old and taller than both of us. It was an impressive spectacle. I was literally speechless and, as he did not talk, we spent the whole day walking in silence. Walking in silence through his forest. It measured 11 kilometers in length and 3 kilometers at its greatest width. When you remember that all this had come from the hands of this one man, you understood that men could be effective in other ways than destruction.
Very good. Okay. Spectacle. What do you think he's saying here?
Well, the old word for glasses is spectacles. So a spectacle comes from sight and what you see.
Yeah.
And what he saw after 10 years, he felt was very impressive. So many trees had grown.
Right, right. And how about destruction? What do you think there?
Destruction, well, to destroy something, from the verb to destroy. And this is to kind of make a mess of everything. The way the world's politicians have made a mess of the world, how they've destroyed countries through wars and things like that.
Interesting example, okay. Now we have, why did the writer think that Elzéar might have died?
I think the writer thought the war had reached out to Elziard and killed him. Maybe he thought perhaps he can't go to war because he was too old, but a bomb could have dropped on him, or because at that time I suppose the Germans were invading, so I suppose he thought probably Elziard was dead.
Uh-huh. How had the war affected Elziard?
Well, it hadn't interfered with his lifestyle at all.
You are correct. Why is the writer speechless?
He's speechless because he can't believe the amount of trees that had actually grown up. There were like 10,000 trees growing.
Sure. What thoughts about human behavior does he have in the last sentence?
Well, he's saying that mankind on its present path is one of death and destruction, whereas he feels that we could use our resources in a much more positive manner, like Elziard.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Let's take a look. The writer had been a soldier in World War I, had seen so much death all around that he couldn't believe people lived through it all. He thought Elziard must also have died. The war not affected Elziard at all. He continued to plant his trees. Because there was now a large forest of trees, he was so amazed at the size of the forest, he couldn't speak. And he was amazed that just one man could create so much that is good in the environment. He's comparing this with the behavior of other men in wars where only destruction is the result. The writer returns for a final visit in 1945 after World War II. Elziard is still alive. The writer is amazed at what he sees. Not only is there the forest, but houses and even villages have been rebuilt. Please read paragraph 1 for us.
The bus put me down in Vermont. In 1913, this village of 10 or 12 houses had 3 inhabitants. Nettles were feeding upon abandoned houses. Now everything had changed. Even the air. Instead of the harsh, dry winds, a gentle breeze was blowing, laden with scents. A sound like water came from the mountains. It was the wind in the forest. I saw a fountain had been built. Ruins had been cleared away and 5 houses restored. Now there were 28 inhabitants, 4 of them young married couples. It was now a village where one would like to live.
Very good. Okay. Inhabitants. What does that mean?
These are the people that live there.
Uh-huh. And nettles?
These are wild plants and they sting. If you get them on your legs, they sting your legs.
Ah. How about laden?
It means, in this case, to be laden with something is you have a lot of products, a lot of goods. But in this sense, it means it's the smell, this heavy smell, perfume from the lavender, I suppose.
Okay, and a fountain?
This is water which springs up from the ground. Often fountains are man-made.
Very good. Please read our next paragraph.
When I think that one man was able to cause this to grow from wasteland, I'm convinced that in spite of everything, humanity is good.
Uh-huh. Do you want to read this last sentence too?
Elziard Bouffier died peacefully in his sleep in 1947.
Very good. Now, the word wasteland, what's that?
Well, it's an area of land which is, there's just nothing there. It's like rubbish. There's just nettles and weeds and wild things. Nothing which you could call pleasant to the eye.
Okay. And humanity?
This is the people of the world.
Very good. Peacefully.
Well, without any problems. A lot of people die in their sleep, and he died in his sleep and he was at peace.
Sure. Now we have, how had the village and its surroundings changed?
Well, now there were 10 or 12 houses, and there were 3 inhabitants. The abandoned houses, these are houses where nobody lived anymore, were full of nettles. but everything changed, even the air. Instead of the harsh, dry winds, a gentle breeze was blowing laden with scents.
Is the writer an optimist or pessimist at the end of the story, and why?
I think he's optimistic.
Right, humanity is good, right?
Yeah.
What has happened in the writer's life that could have made him pessimistic?
Well, I think he's seen a lot of people die in battle on the battlefield, and I think he must have seen a lot of his friends, fellow soldiers, being killed in the war.
Yeah. How old was Elzar when he died?
I worked this out once, but my maths is so terrible, I'm not going to even give it a go.
Okay, those are the answers, right? There's some math involved, but this is an English class. So, let's just get the answer. Because the forest land was not barren and dry anymore, and people had returned to the village, houses had been restored and a fountain had been built. The writer is an optimist because he has learned that good can come from the work of one man. In 2 world wars, he's experienced the terrible things that men can do to each other. This could have made him pessimistic. But Elzar's work makes him think that despite everything, humanity is good. Elzar was 55 in 1913, so in 1947, when he died, he was 89. Actually, we were on the right track, weren't we?
Yeah.
Okay, we got it. His long life was important because it meant he could plant a lot of trees. Now we have, what do you think? Do you think that's a true story? Do you think Elzar was ever married?
I don't think this was a true story, but I believe it's based on a true story. I think there's an element of truth in it, but I don't believe that Elzar was ever married.
You don't think he was?
No, because he's living this solitary life, so if that's the case, where's his wife? He doesn't appear to have one.
How would you describe the personality of Elzar Wolfier?
He seems to be a very introverted man. He doesn't want to talk, he just wants to plant trees.
Okay. Do you know any people like him in your life?
Yes, quite a lot.
Okay. In the context of the 20th century and its 2 world wars, what point is Giono trying to make about nature and the importance of individual human beings?
I think he's trying to say, look, we don't need wars to exist. We can plant trees, we can build villages, we can plant food. We don't need to go and take and destroy. I think that's the point he's trying to make.
Right. Right. Take a look. So, it's not a true story, but it's based on a true story. In the complete story, Elzar was married and had a son, but his wife and child were killed in an accident. This is when he started planting trees. So, some adjectives to describe Elzar are calm, quiet, wise, contented, kind, reserved, thoughtful, and sensitive. Giono was saying that despite the terrible things that men can do to man, we should remember there are good men and women in their behavior, and their behavior can have a positive influence on the world. Okay. Once again, my name is Lou, and we were working on the New Headway book, Intermediate Edition. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time.